All right. Welcome, everyone, to the group exhibit for hydrogen fuel cells and batteries at the Hanover Fair 2016. My name is Michael Sinclair. I will be the moderator for the next discussion. I would like to invite you to please join us, have a seat, order a complimentary beverage, and enjoy the discussion. Also, audience, I welcome questions anytime. I'll be having just a conversation up here with our guest. At any point, raise your hand and I'll bring the microphone to you so you can pose your question. The topic of the discussion it's entitled Creating Value, Megawatt Scale Storage in North America. Today, joining me is the president and CEO of Proton OnSite. His name is Robert Friedland. Please join me in welcoming him to the stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Great. Thanks again for joining me.
You're welcome.
If we wouldn't mind providing a brief introduction about your company to our audience.
Sure. Well, thanks for stopping in to listen. So I'm Rob Friedland. I'm the president and CEO of Proton OnSite. So Proton is a 20-year-old proton exchange membrane water electrolysis company based in the United States. I'm one of the co-founders of the company, and we've always done just PEM electrolysis. It's what we were founded on. And over the last couple of years, we've released our largest electrolyzer, which is the megawatt scale PEM electrolyzer that we're selling into a number of energy storage and fueling applications, and have a lot of exciting things really happening today in North America that I think we'll talk about now. And I invite you all to stop by our booth. We're happy to talk to you about some of our other products and what we've been doing as well. And again, there's distinctions between PEM and alkaline electrolysis that we may or may not get into today, but we're happy to talk to you about that at our booth as well. So thank you for coming.
And I'll just take this opportunity to mention their booth is right here at C70, just behind us, to my right of the stage, your left. Thank you, Rob. So what technology options currently exist for megawatt scale storage?
So in the electrolysis world, you're really looking at PEM, or you're looking at an alkaline-based technology, which uses a liquid electrolyte. The prime differences when you get into a PEM technology are really the response time. Alkaline systems work off of a liquid that needs to be balanced on the hydrogen and oxygen side, so typically can't respond quite as fast as a PEM system. And also you have more complications with the pressurized oxygen. There are different varieties of PEM electrolyzers in terms of how you balance the hydrogen and the oxygen pressures. PEM systems, our PEM system and all of our systems operate at elevated hydrogen pressure up to 30 bar and ambient oxygen pressure. So none of our systems, unless you're looking for a specialized military system, will elevate the pressure on the oxygen side. So we do that for safety reasons, cost reasons, and system simplicity reasons that we're happy to talk to you a little bit more about. Outside of electrolyzers, you really get into batteries and other technologies, including many of the flow battery chemistries that are coming onto the market. And really, it's a rubric, if you will, of different technologies that, depending on your power level, depending on how much storage you're looking to store, hydrogen can be part of the alternatives that you would look at in the higher power levels and the longer storage durations against lead-acid batteries or even some of the flow battery chemistries that are out there.
So I think you briefly touched on it, but I guess the defining characteristics, or what are the design decisions that would lead you down the path of electrolyzing hydrogen for storage at megawatt scale?
So the first question I always ask a client is, what are you trying to do? So because someone will come and say, I want to make hydrogen from wind. Okay, why do you want to do that? So are you going to sell the gas as a commodity? Or are you going to convert it back to power? What are you trying to do? And for how long? Because in a lot of cases, it might make more sense to use a battery. And I know it sounds like, well, why is an electrolyzer guy trying to steer people to a battery? We sell solutions. So if hydrogen fits, and we see times where you're trying to shift large amounts of power over to, say, from a nighttime load where you have a lot of wind energy or excess solar during the day, and you want to shift it to night, you can store that as hydrogen and shift it using either a turbine, a gas turbine, or a fuel cell, and it might pencil out. But in some cases, it won't. So you need to look at that. If you're using the gas for a fuel, or you're using it for combining it with CO2 for a biogas application, again, other markets or other uses of that hydrogen could potentially create a value proposition where it makes more sense to use hydrogen as your energy storage mechanism. And then one of the other things is, what's your storage media? Do you have salt caverns available? Salt caverns in northern Germany are prevalent, and you can store hydrogen in them very well and very inexpensively, relatively speaking. If you have to compress it and put it into high-pressure tanks, more expensive. So there are a lot of variables that go in, just as there are when you choose different choices for making grid power. You might choose coal or natural gas or other things, depending on what's geographic to that region.
And all storage at this scale is fairly new technology. How would you compare electrolysis and hydrogen storage in terms of its state of commercial readiness?
Well, that's a great question, because hydrogen or electrolysis is looked at like a new technology, but alkaline electrolysis has been around for 120 years, and PEM electrolysis has been around for 60 years. So the flow battery guys will always come out and talk about how new, those technologies are, and most of theirs are less than 3 years. So I think you really have the core technology for PEM has been around for a long, long time, and we've been practicing it for 20 plus years, and prior to that, with United Technologies, 20 years beyond that. So there is a tremendous amount of history and robustness built into PEM systems and built into the technology that underlies them. So we don't consider them to be, while this size and scale of PEM units are new to the market, we don't really consider them to be new technology. And we can point to systems that we have operating in the field for over 15 years that use the same core technology. If you come to our plant, you'll see the basic technology DNA, is what I tend to call it, that goes from the smallest units we build up to the megawatt unit that's running in our plant right now. So you can see the same things, and that same quality, that same technology, and the same materials of construction are built into the plants that we sell today. So we consider it to be a mature technology. We consider it that the deployment of the product itself is in its early stages, but that's more of a market thing really than a technology thing.
Very good. And what types of projects are economically viable in today's market?
So it's really exciting time, I think, for the industry right now. We're really moving, I believe, beyond the government-funded commercial, the government-funded research project in the cost-sharing schema that we've all been involved in, where we're getting demonstration projects out, and we've done them. We have energy storage projects in Switzerland at Solothurn and EMPA, and have done projects to showcase technologies in the United States with Southern California Gas, and those are important because people write papers about them and they verify things about the technology. But now, especially in North America, we had hoped to really be able to announce the full details at this show, but we're slightly behind on getting a couple of contracts signed. But we have multiple megawatts of electrolysis that we will be signing and announcing within the next 30 days that are for real viable projects operating in North America. One of them is shifting demand charges, which is a phenomenon that we have in the United States for one client who's been able to work a payback. Another one is on an off-grid installation where the client has got a solar field and is going to be using the excess solar power to generate hydrogen gas to make sure he can firm the power at night using fuel cells. We have another opportunity on an island off the coast of the United States that will be doing something similar, again in an off-grid area where it's taking solar and combining it and storing it perhaps with some solar turbines. So these are entrepreneurs who've been able to go out and get real financing through a bank to finance a PPA. In one of the cases, the guy's written a 20-year PPA to the client to guarantee him a certain 98% uptime on the power that he's providing to the village. And part of the infrastructure of that is going to include 2 megawatts of electrolysis and some corresponding fuel cells. So these are real projects that are happening today. We're seeing other projects happening in Asia. Ironically, if you go back and roll the tape from probably 2 or 3 years ago when I was sitting here, I would have told you that Germany is going to be first followed by most of Europe. I think some of the laws that have been evolving in Europe have stalled that a little bit, and I think we're really starting to see Asia and Southeast Asia and maybe some parts of North America kind of lurch forward in some of the early projects that are actually meeting the test of some commercial markets.
Along the same lines, are there certain characteristics of projects that that make them viable in today's market, or can you say across the board that if you have a reason to store energy, if it's load shifting or whatever, that hydrogen is right for you, or is there certain characteristics that you need in a project?
Yeah, it's still very site-specific. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we're not at a mass market level. We're right at the beginning of the adoption curve for this kind of technology. So you're looking at high power priced environments, and you would think Europe would be a good one for that, and it will be. Certainly when you get into island economies or you get into off-grid situations, you can put solar in now for 7.5, 8 cents a kilowatt hour on a decent sized scale. So if you can start to arbitrage that with storage technologies and be able to sell power maybe at 20 or 20 plus cents a kilowatt hour, that's US cents, you can begin to create a financial payback model that can work. So that's what we're really seeing. But you need to be in situations where you can have pricing at those levels, at least at this early stage. So it's not going to work in necessarily all parts of the mainland US, except for unique areas. But we see that changing as prices start to come down and as the technology becomes a little bit more common, that we'll start to see more and more of those opportunities happen on a much broader scale.
Okay, and is hydrogen storage suitable for distributed residential scale deployment?
So when it comes to residential, this is a category where I will usually say, go look at batteries. Because people will come to me all the time and say, hey, I want to put solar on my roof, and I want to put an electrolyzer in my garage, and I want to fill my car, and I want to do all this great stuff. And if they're Bill Gates or they're Elon Musk or somebody, then maybe they have enough money to do that. But for the ordinary person, that's really not practical. I think for shifting the hydrogen at the smaller scale, it's starting to work economically at the large scale, but it's going to need to continue to evolve before the costing can really come down to work at the residential area. So I think if you're putting solar on your roof at home, you're going to use batteries, you're going to have a robust electrical area. I think if you're going to fill up your hydrogen car, the most economic way to do that will really be to find a station, hopefully nearby, where it's being done on a much larger scale and be more economic.
Okay, are there any audience questions? If not, I've got another one here. I guess, what does the roadmap look like to total widespread adoption? To grid parity, power. I guess, how does the technology roadmap look like for that?
Well, so first and foremost, the cost of the renewable assets need to continue to come down. So wind, solar, solar obviously continues to come down. Wind power continues to come down. So you have to have an underlying base where the cost of that energy produced is going to be economical. The second piece is how much of that renewable energy is on your grid. If you're at 3, 4, 5, 10% penetration like we are in many areas of the United States, well, we can absorb all of the power that we make off the renewables, so we don't have to worry about it. But as more and more power comes onto the grid as a higher percentage of the renewable load, the variability is causing more and more problems. You're starting to see that more in Europe now, especially in places like Germany or even in Denmark, where the numbers are pretty high in terms of that penetration. So there you need to use storage to buffer that load and do things to shift around the load so you can have power all the time. We've all been accustomed to coming home, turning on the lights, and we want the lights to come on. So you need to do different things associated with that storage. So that's where things continue to evolve, so that the different technologies that play to make that work will become more numerous and more varied. And I think hydrogen will play a wider role as more of that stranded power becomes available. Because when the power is stranded, it essentially becomes free, or becomes at a very low cost. And that way you can make hydrogen very inexpensively and then either use it or sell it for industrial purposes. There's a really interesting report that came out from Inicio and LBST recently on using renewable generated hydrogen in France and Germany for the refining industry, because a lot of hydrogen is used to make gasoline today. And interestingly, it's a way to green up the petroleum market in a certain sort of perverse way of looking at it. But it's an interesting market, and again, I think you'll start to see more and more of these things develop as these prices continue to come down.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So for more information, of course, as I mentioned, please join Rob and Proton OnSite at their booth at C70, just behind us here. And don't go anywhere. We have another discussion coming up right away. The title is Bundled Expertise for Shaping the Future Energy System, and that's with Energy Saxony. So if you wouldn't mind, please join me in thanking Rob for joining me in this discussion.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks a lot.